Buffalo right now is favored by a full touchdown and an extra point, so 7 points. This is going to be a better game, I think, than most people feel. I actually really think this game is going to be quite competitive. I actually think it's not going to be a blowout. I know a lot of people believe that the Buffalo Bills are just going to run over the Indianapolis Colts. I think there are ways in this game where the Colts can not only make it close, but actually pull off an upset, believe it or not. I don't think the Colts are a great team, but I think if they play a certain style and they approach the game in a certain way, I think they have a chance to make this one good. So I'm looking forward to this game probably more now than I was earlier in the week, because as good as Buffalo has looked, as unstoppable as they have been, I do think that the Colts do pose them some problems. So let's take a look at the tail of the tape, and that is the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, Buffalo surged at the end of the season, but one thing that the Colts are very good at this year, turnover differential. Plus 10 in the turnover differential. That's going to be a big deal for this game. If they want to pull off the upset, Indianapolis is going to have to turn the football over defensively. They're going to have to keep possession of the football. Indianapolis is one of the few teams in these playoffs and in the NFL this year that had both a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. That is not taken lightly. Buffalo didn't have a top 10 defense this year, ranking just outside at number 12, but they have one of the better pass attacks in the NFL, and that will definitely test Indianapolis's defense in this game. Now, let's start off with the Indianapolis offense versus the Buffalo defense. So I think in this game, we are going to have to see Indy really, I think, pass as a secondary to their rushing attack. I think the way that we've seen Buffalo be able to attack and get attacked and get scored on and get consistently, beaten is by teams running the football and by teams keeping the ball away from Josh Allen. And I think that is where the game plan starts. Because I think a lot of people approach it as you need to find some sort of way to stop Josh Allen and this offense and the explosive ability. That's part of it. But I think in the NFL today, you need to score points to beat these upper echelon teams and to pull off upsets. And Indianapolis's best approach, in my opinion, as you can see just statistically, is to run the football and run the football versus a defensive line that isn't very good versus the run in Buffalo. And really, once they get to the red zone, they need to execute in the red zone. And Buffalo's defense, if they've had a weakness all year, it is in the red zone. So if they can move the ball between the 20s, keep the ball on the ground, keep the ball out of Rivers' hands unless it's absolutely necessary to attack that secondary. Obviously, you're going to have some sort of balance. But I think the primary focus for Indy is to milk the clock, keep possession of the football, run the ball, use a little play action, keep Buffalo's defense on their toes, and I think that's the best way of attacking this defense. I think that Phillip Rivers has been pretty good this year when facing not very good defenses, but Buffalo is a better defense than they've faced. I actually took a note here. I believe that Buffalo is the third best defense Indianapolis has played all year. And in those two games where Indianapolis played good defenses in the top 10, Chicago and Baltimore, they struggled to score points. So they only scored 11 and 10 points in those games for Chicago and Baltimore. Now, Buffalo statistically is not on the level of Baltimore or Chicago. Lately, they've been playing better football. And if that trend continues, you would expect that Buffalo's defense should do well enough to win this game. This game is expected to be 30 degrees. So that is, close to freezing temperatures, right? So Phillip Rivers in cold weather games is 1-5 in those games. He is 0-3 in the playoffs. It's actually quite shocking that Phillip Rivers, a guy that's played for so long, he's only actually played in 5 games that are in cold temperatures. In those games, he has an 84 passer rating. He has 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So just overall, by going by the history of Philip Rivers, it would be said or be known that Philip Rivers is not very good in cold weather. I believe the last time he played in a playoff game that it was in cold weather, which was 2 years ago versus New England. He did not play well in that game. They got ran over. They were destroyed. The Chargers were destroyed by the Patriots, who went on to win the Super Bowl. But it's a different defense. You know, he's played some good defenses in that weather, so a lot of that has to do with the defense. I would probably assume that this Buffalo defense isn't as good as the ones he's played in the past. But still, it's something to note that Philip Rivers, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. If it's cold, it might have something to do with his ability to throw the ball down the field and be efficient in that area of the game. When you take a look at the other side of the ball, passing-wise, they're top 3 in the league. Rushing-wise, kind of irrelevant. I mean, they don't really run the ball a lot, and they haven't really had a lot of success running. So obviously they're not balanced, but it hasn't really seemed to matter in most of the games they've played this year. Most of the games they've played this year, they've been able to just be fine passing the football, better than fine, in fact. And on third down, it's been crucial for the Bills. That's kind of where Josh Allen has been able to take over with his physical ability, move the chains with his arm or his legs, scramble when necessary, buy an extra second of time to get rid of the football to make a big play. And that's really where Buffalo has been hard to stop, is on third down, especially with Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs, who are 2 of the better route runners in the game and really tough to cover in those big situations. Now, Indy has been pretty good defensively, top 10 in both pass DVOA and run DVOA, but they do struggle on third down, and they're kind of average in the red zone. So for Indianapolis to, I believe, slow down Josh Allen in this offense and Stephon Diggs, they're going to have to be better on third down. They're going to have to get pressure, maybe be creative, send some blitzes, maybe just change up their tendencies a little bit. I think that has to come for Indianapolis. Now, something I actually heard doing research for this game is that Josh Allen has actually been at his worst when playing cover 2. So when the opposing defense plays cover 2, he has actually ranked at the bottom of the league, I think somewhere in the bottom 5 in completion percentage, which Indianapolis plays a lot of cover 2 defense, which I thought was very interesting. So if that is the case and Indianapolis plays the way they play and Josh Allen, see, this is what I'm worried about. If Cole Beasley is okay, which I assume he will be, they should be fine moving the ball underneath. But if Cole Beasley does not play, that actually would change this offense quite a bit, because I think it takes the underneath threat and the consistency of the short to intermediate passing game of Buffalo away a little bit. It just won't be as strong. So if Cole Beasley's okay and he plays, that's a big factor in my opinion. You already have a really good matchup there. Obviously, Indy has one of the better nickel corners in the NFL. But I just don't know if the Colts pass rush can get there consistently. And I feel like Josh Allen, with Brian Daboll, the way that he's calling plays, be able to just get the ball out of Allen's hands very quickly, especially if Beasley is healthy and ready to go. John Brown should be back in the lineup full 100%, so that's good. But overall, I look at this game, and I don't think Indianapolis will be able to hang with Buffalo in terms of scoring points. I think Indianapolis can make this one competitive if the game script turns out a certain way. If Indianapolis can dominate the line of scrimmage, which I should show the statistics there on that one. So the line of scrimmage, offensive line, defensive line wise, you have Buffalo 15th in offensive line yards and Indianapolis in 20th. So that's offensive line yards. Indianapolis hasn't really gotten better in terms of running the football. Lately, they've been better, right? Taylor's been a lot better lately than he was at the beginning of the year. He sucked at the beginning of the year, and I feel like that had a lot to do with the way the offensive line has performed. Offensive line sack percentage, pretty even there. Buffalo's offensive line's been really good. Part of that's Josh Allen. Part of that's the offense. I do believe the defensive line's pretty even as well. If Indianapolis had a dominant pass rush or a dominant secondary, then I might be looking at this game a little bit differently. But what I said about the Colts before the playoffs, I think really reigns true here. Indianapolis is a good team, but they're not a great team, and they don't have any element to their team that's great, right? The Colts don't have a great quarterback. They don't have a great offensive line this year, which we expected it to be great, but it hasn't. They don't have a great rushing attack. They don't have a great receiver. They don't have a great corner or corners. They don't have a great secondary. They don't have a great pass rush. They're good, right? You look at the stats, top 10, but they are not great. And I just feel like, sure, they can make it close. They make it competitive. If Phillip Rivers just doesn't turn the ball over, makes enough throws, but doesn't have to be forced into a lot of third downs, they'll be fine. If they can run the ball, they'll be fine. I think they can keep Josh Allen on the sidelines. They can make it close. They can make it competitive. But if Rivers isn't comfortable, if Rivers isn't, kind of the secondary option in the offense and the rushing attack isn't operating, then I feel like Buffalo is going to easily be able to run away with this game and continue to separate as the game goes on. So I could see the game being really close early on. I could see the game being really competitive early. And then I feel like Buffalo in the second half, once they kind of figure out what the Colts are doing on offense and on defense and they adjust to it, I feel like they're going to be able to kind of run away with it. So overall, I see the Buffalo Bills winning this game pretty easily. I think it's going to be somewhere like Buffalo 31, like low 30s, 31 to 34 points to Indianapolis's like 20 something, 20 to 24, 27 maybe at the most. Like, I do think the Colts can score on the Bills. I think the way that their offense is designed, I do believe that they can move the football here, but I just don't think they'll have enough on defense, really. I've seen the Colts defense be taken advantage of by good quarterbacks who have good weapons. We've seen Watson score on them. We've seen Rodgers score on them. We've seen good quarterbacks be able to move the ball through the air. And the way Brian Daboll is calling plays, the way that they have balance in their passing game, not necessarily with their rushing attack, but in their passing game, with the way that they can pass short, the pass intermediate, pass deep. I think that's too much for the Colts, who play a very vanilla style of defense. I don't know how different they can be in this matchup, but we'll see if that cover 2 stat is real on Saturday. But the first game, I think, will belong to the Bills. I think they should win this game, and I think they'll make a statement here that, hey, they are, if you didn't believe before, they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So I have the Buffalo Bills winning this game. In terms of the spread, I'm leaning towards going with Buffalo as well, covering the spread of 7. I think 7 is a fair number for this game. I could see some people taking the Colts. I could see some people feeling the Colts would be close, but I think overall the Bills should be able to win by, 8 to 13 points. I wouldn't be surprised. And I do feel if it's a blowout either way, it's definitely going to be Buffalo. Because I think if it's a blowout, it's basically Phillip Rivers just has a bad game in the cold, turns the ball over. I could certainly see that happening as well, which would then turn the game, in my opinion, into more of a blowout. But the Colts are a solid team. Don't underestimate them. They are solid all around, and they will make this one competitive and tough for Buffalo. This isn't an easy game. This is far from the easiest game that Buffalo's had all season. This is far from the easiest game of this week, in my opinion. I think there's much easier matchups, particularly in the NFC for some of these wild card teams than Buffalo, which is kind of funny because Buffalo's the number 2 seed in a conference, and you would think that that's an easy game, but it's not. The Colts are a legitimate playoff team. I know they're the 7 seed, but they're a legitimate playoff team. So there you go.